They smile warmly. They offer help without being asked. They never raise their voice. But something feels off. You can't explain it. It's as if their kindness is hollow. They're calm, unnatural, like a mask stretched too tight. And Jung would tell you, trust that feeling. Because the most dangerous person isn't the one who shows their rage, but the one who has no rage at all. They've buried it, forgotten it, denied it. But it's still there, waiting, boiling beneath their pristine persona. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the rejected part of the psyche we pretend doesn't exist. And when someone claims they have no darkness, no flaws, no shameful desires, that's not purity, that's possession. The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely, Jung wrote in Modern Man in Search of a Soul. But those who refuse that terrifying work become something far worse than flawed. They become unknowable, even to themselves. And if you stay until the end, you'll see why those who deny their shadow are not just dangerous to others. They're ticking time bombs to themselves. They always seem perfect. That's your first warning. They never get angry, never complain, never make mistakes, or at least never admit them. They wear goodness like armor, crafted from politeness, helpfulness, and self-denial. But behind the glow of saintly behavior is a soul at war with itself. Jung warned us, the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. And those who insist on only showing their light are often hiding something far worse than a flaw. They're hiding their truth. You've seen this pattern. A generous boss who secretly resents their staff. A spiritual guide who manipulates followers for their own good. A parent who sacrifices everything, then guilt trips their children for not being grateful enough. The pattern is subtle at first. You feel uneasy around them, but can't say why. You sense their anger, but it never comes out directly. Instead, it leaks through passive aggression, overprotection, or martyrdom. These people aren't pretending exactly. They believe in their virtue, but they've banished the unacceptable parts of themselves so deeply that even they can't see them anymore. That's the danger. As Jung put it in Psychological Types, it is a frightening thought that man also has a shadow side to him, consisting not just of little weaknesses and foibles, but of a positively demonic dynamism. This isn't harmless repression. This is psychological splitting, where a person's conscious identity becomes surgically separated from their forbidden impulses. And over time, this inner fracture grows into external chaos. You start to notice the second warning, projection. They accuse others of what they can't accept in themselves. They spot arrogance in others, but miss their own superiority. They shame others for greed while secretly craving control. They are always helping, but somehow you feel trapped. Jung called this the disowned self projected onto others. And here's where it gets chilling. The more they deny their inner shadow, the more convinced they become that the shadow is out there, in you, in society, in enemies. They don't fight their inner darkness. They fight you. You'll find this pattern in cult leaders, abusive partners, even well-meaning activists who believe their cause justifies cruelty. All of them convinced, I'm the good one. All of them blind to the havoc they unleash in virtue's name. You're not safe around someone who sees no darkness in themselves, because one day that darkness will come for you, wearing a smile. To understand why this makes a person truly dangerous, you need to understand what Jung meant by the shadow. The shadow isn't evil, it's human. It's everything you've ever rejected about yourself. It's the sadness you weren't allowed to show, the rage you learned to swallow, the ambition you were told was selfish, the jealousy, the fear, the hunger, the parts you buried to become who others wanted you to be. But buried doesn't mean gone. Repressed traits don't disappear. They go unconscious. And what's unconscious acts without your permission. Jung described it in ion like this: the shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality, for no one can become conscious of the shadow without considerable moral effort. That effort? Facing what you hate in others, inside yourself, owning your capacity to lie, to harm, to dominate, to envy, and not just owning it, but making peace with it. The person who refuses that work, who claims to have nothing dark within them, they aren't just repressed, they're possessed by a false self-image. They become addicted to being the good one. Every action becomes a performance of righteousness. Every relationship becomes a stage to reinforce their perfection. Every criticism becomes a threat to their identity. This is why charm can be so misleading. Jung once said in his lectures on analytical psychology, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own souls. And here's what they do. They become overly generous, overly forgiving, overly spiritual. They outlove, outcare, and outsacrifice everyone around them, not out of real compassion, but to bury the monster within. But what they repress doesn't stay buried. It creeps out sideways. They start controlling others for their own good. They moralize every disagreement as if only they see the truth. They manipulate with guilt, silence, or overhelping. If someone always acts as the rescuer, you have to ask, who gave them that role? And what happens when you stop needing to be rescued? Here's the key danger. They become incapable of introspection, because to reflect would mean facing the part of themselves they've locked away, to admit they're angry, to admit they're afraid, to admit that they sometimes want power, control, or revenge. But in the shadow's prison, those impulses grow twisted. Unconscious anger turns into moral superiority. Buried envy turns into harsh judgment of others. Suppressed fear becomes rigid control of their environment. This person doesn't know why they're exhausted, why people walk on eggshells around them, why they never feel truly loved, no matter how much they give. Because it isn't love they offer, it's control, disguised as virtue. You'll notice they can't receive feedback. They deflect, deny, or accuse. They will do anything to protect the illusion that they're always kind, always right, always above reproach. But here's the twist. The more they deny their shadow, the more powerful it becomes, and eventually it breaks through. Sometimes in explosive ways, outbursts, breakdowns, or scandals. Other times, in subtle cruelty that even they don't recognize as cruelty. This is how someone becomes dangerous without ever intending to. Not because they're evil, but because they believe they aren't capable of evil. And that belief makes them blind. Jung warned us repeatedly, the shadow is a tight passage, a narrow door, whose painful constriction no one is spared who goes down to the deep well. The person who refuses to walk through that door becomes a mirror maze. Their relationships become manipulative, their love conditional, their words disorienting. They keep asking others to reflect their light, while refusing to face their own darkness. Eventually, everyone around them pays the price for their so-called perfection. But the one who pays most is them. Now look closer. Not at them, at you. Because this isn't just about spotting dangerous people. It's about how long you've been hiding your own shadow. How long have you smiled when you wanted to scream? How often have you said, "I'm fine," when you were breaking inside? And how many times have you betrayed yourself just to be liked? That's the shadow at work, not just in others, in you. Jung never said the shadow was only for the bad ones. He said every human being has one, and the more you think you don't, the more it controls you. We all do it. You want to be a good friend, so you never say how drained you feel. You want to be strong, so you never admit you're overwhelmed. You want to be nice, so you let people cross your boundaries. Again and again. But niceness is not goodness. Compliance is not virtue. Self-denial is not purity. It's fear, masked in manners. Your shadow contains the things you were told were too much, too loud, too angry, too needy, too proud. So you buried them. You trimmed your truth to fit the mold. You made yourself smaller so others wouldn't leave. But your shadow remembers, and it's tired of waiting. It shows up in your dreams as chaos, in your thoughts as self-loathing, in your relationships as resentment. You say yes when you want to say no, and then wonder why you feel invisible. You overgive, overperform, overcorrect, and then wonder why you feel unloved. But it's not them. It's the disowned part of you screaming to be seen. As Jung wrote in The Archetypes and the Collective Unconscious, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Read that again, because this is the secret most people never face. The patterns that hurt you are not random. They're reflections of your unclaimed shadow. You keep attracting manipulators. Maybe you still manipulate yourself with guilt. You keep encountering betrayal. Maybe there's a part of you that keeps betraying your truth for approval. You keep finding perfect people who turn cold. Maybe you're still chasing someone to reflect your light because you're afraid of your dark. And here's the hard truth. You can't spot these people unless you've faced their mirror inside yourself. It's not about becoming suspicious of everyone. It's about becoming radically honest with yourself. What don't you want others to see? What traits do you criticize in others that you secretly carry? What do you hide because you're afraid it makes you unlovable? That's your shadow. And the moment you stop running from it, you stop being fooled by those who do. Because the most dangerous people are not evil. They're unconscious. They act without knowing why. They justify harm with moral logic. They break people in the name of help. But you're waking up. And once you start seeing clearly, the masks begin to fall. You spot the smile that doesn't reach the eyes, the offer that comes with a leash, the compliment that leaves you hollow. You begin to trust your gut again, because your gut isn't paranoid, it's ancient. It's your inner compass warning you when someone's light is too clean. And most of all, you start to reclaim what you lost. The courage to say no, the fire in your anger, the truth in your shame, the edge in your desire, the pieces you abandoned, to be loved. You pick them back up. Because to reclaim your shadow isn't to become dangerous, it's to become whole. And only the whole person can recognize danger without falling for it. But here's the paradox Jung whispered through every one of his works. What you most fear in yourself is the key to your greatest power. And in chapter 5, that's exactly where we're going. The shadow isn't your enemy. It's your potential, twisted by fear. Jung knew this. Everything you repress becomes a source of suffering, but everything you integrate becomes a source of strength. Anger becomes boundaries. Fear becomes intuition. Desire becomes direction. Even shame becomes compassion. The work is brutal. It's not a Pinterest quote or a 5-minute meditation. It's looking in the mirror and saying, yes, that's me too. The liar, the manipulator, the jealous one, the coward, the tyrant. It lives in you. And the more you admit it, the more power you gain over it. Jung said in Psychology and Alchemy, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This is what most people avoid. They chase good vibes. They declare their positivity. They light candles and chant affirmations. But deep down, they're terrified of the beast in the basement. You are not here to kill the beast. You're here to speak to it, to understand it, to bring it into the light. That's the alchemy. That's how you transmute darkness into sovereignty. Imagine this. You no longer need to be liked. You no longer shapeshift to keep the peace. You can say no without guilt, yes without fear. I'm angry without shame. Now you're not dangerous to others. You're dangerous to illusions, to manipulation, to people who profit from your silence. You walk into a room and you don't need to dominate. Your grounded presence says, I know who I am. I've met my darkness. You can't use it against me. This is what Jung meant by individuation, not becoming perfect, but becoming real. And here's the secret. When you own your shadow, it stops running the show. You stop reacting. You start choosing. You stop chasing light. You start radiating it. Power doesn't come from denying your flaws. It comes from befriending them. Then, they can't be weaponized against you. No one can shame you with your past when you've already forgiven yourself. No one can gaslight your rage when you trust your boundaries. No one can hijack your empathy when you've learned to protect your soul. Now ask yourself, what if the version of you you've been hiding is the one you've been searching for all along? Because in the final chapter, we'll reveal the dual path forward, how to protect yourself from those who deny their shadow, and how to finally live free from the denial of your own. You've seen the danger. Now it's time to choose. Because there are only two kinds of people in this world: those who face their shadow and those who let it rule them from the dark. One path leads to chaos cloaked in virtue. The other, to clarity, freedom, and terrifying honesty. If you want to protect yourself from dangerous people, you must first stop being dangerous to yourself. And that starts by asking, where am I still performing goodness to avoid rejection? Where am I still calling self-betrayal kindness? Jung never gave us simple steps, but he gave us this compass. What you most hate in others is a mirror. What you most hide in yourself is a key. And what you most fear to admit is your next doorway. If this truth struck a nerve, don't click away. You've just begun the descent that changes everything. Leave a comment right now with one word from your own shadow. Rage, need, shame, envy. Name it, and you start taming it. And if this video helped you see someone, maybe yourself, more clearly, hit the like button so the algorithm spreads the warning. Subscribe for the next deep dive. Because in our upcoming episode, we'll expose why narcissists seem untouchable and how Jung's forgotten insights reveal the only way to disarm their control. But remember, no truth about others will ever protect you more than the truth you claim about yourself. So, what part of you are you still afraid to look at? Because that part is where your real power begins.